Hello and welcome to a very special How I Paint Things. Now, the camera pulled back as far as it is, you can see what's going on here. Celestine is a pretty big miniature. Not so much physically, but just in the space that she takes up, trying to get her all on screen is a bit of a mission. Now today what I'm going to do is actually crack out the speed paints for most of this, because as I'm going to mention in a little bit, she's been unpainted for ages, and I wanted to try something a little outside the box and to paint a really nice character relatively quickly. And the end result is one which I'm happy enough to put on the table. She's not going to win any awards, but this is easy and really a lot quicker than I was expecting. So all of the paints for this one will be listed in the description below. There's timestamps you can jump around as well. Let's get started. Now, obviously, you've seen the thumbnail, you've seen the introduction, you know whether or not this works. I don't have that luxury yet. I am going into this blind and I am going to experiment on camera. So wish me luck. If you are watching this on the day that it goes live, then it's my birthday. Hooray me! And I wanted to do something which I've wanted to do for a while. Literally the day she came out. I actually pre-ordered Celestine as part of the Triumvirate of the Imperium box in the last days of 7th edition 40k. Assembled her pretty much the day she arrived, and then she's been in my various cupboards and what have you, and I haven't done anything with it. I've always wanted to paint her, but I've never wanted to do the job of painting her. It always felt like it was going to be a little too fiddly for me. So today, instead, we're going to blow that wide open. I'm going to paint her. And I'm going to paint her as quickly and easily as I can so that I don't get gun shy and leave her half done. And that's part of the reason why I'm recording it, because now I'm locked in. So yeah, fingers crossed. Now you'll see, of course, first of all, that I have primed her in white. I've used the Army Painter's matte white because it generally gives me a slightly smoother finish on the primed surfaces than White Scar, or is it Skull White now? Anyhow, I like it a little bit more than the Citadel version, but you can use what you would like. We are going to start first by painting in the Armour Gold. Now, I'm going to start with that because I've got it in my head. If I paint the gold, parts of the miniature that are going to be difficult to reach are mostly gold armor. So gold is the color where I'm likely to mess up and to splurge over and make a mess of things. So instead of painstakingly painting everything else and then trying to paint the armor around it, I can be a little bit more loose with how I approach the armor. And then if I make a splurge over anything, I can tidy the white, because most of these other areas of color are relatively easy to reach. At least that is the plan. So we'll see how that pans out in reality. Now, one quick thought is that I am going to be wearing a latex or nitrile glove if you are allergic to latex. Reason being, the miniature, she's got some pretty wicked dance moves. If I'd painted her before she was assembled, I wouldn't have to contend with this, but lesson learned. So what I'm going to do is grip her from the base of her cape for most of this. I'm wearing the glove because I don't want to leave the oily residues in my fingertips on the primer. It will mess with the speed paint if I'm not careful with that. So, glove time, let's get painting. So the armor color, after a bit of testing on another miniature, I've decided on Hoplite Gold as a base coat for what I'm going to do. Most of what I'm painting on is going to be done with a medium layer brush. And yeah, I'm going to be as careful as I can with this going on. But like I mentioned, half the reason in doing this first is that I can make a mess and it's not the end of the world. Now, particularly on areas like her legs, what I'd suggest is start up at the top of a panel and try and keep your brush moving in the same direction as you apply the paint to make sure that any brush strokes are going to be kept to a minimum. That might be a little bit much, so I'll shift that around. Now that's actually already come out a lot better than I would have expected. I'm quite surprised by that. But what I'm going to do now, you'll see I've done most of the armor, but I have rinsed my brush off a couple of times throughout that experience, and I'm now going to paint the wings. I'm just changing how I'm holding her. Now I would recommend, while you're using these contrast metallics intermittently to just stir up your little pool of them in your palette. Because if you let them settle, some of the effect is going to be lost when you apply them. So now once that's dried, I've actually realized that I'm going to do more to the armor anyway, and I'm probably going to make a huge mess. So I lucked out doing this first. It actually looks a lot better than I would have expected. But her armor in the photos and what have you, it is a much more rosy kind of gold. So that's what I'm going to do now. What I have is Reikland Flesh Shade, and I'm going to use medium shade brush for this because mine still keeps quite a nice tip. As much as possible, I'm going to try and avoid getting this on other bits, but again, no great shakes if I do. I just want to make the gold armor a little bit warmer. Now I do hope that this shows up properly on camera because this actually looks quite a lot like Retributor armor once it's had that shade. So that's ideal, it's really quite close to what I wanted. What I am going to do though is to whip out one of my grody old brushes and some Sigmarite. Let's start carefully up on her wing here. And I'm just going to buff along the edges of the armor, brighten this up a little bit. The other thing with this too is it's going to even out the gold a little bit, so we'll have that nice shaded warm recess using the speed paint as the base coat essentially. And then with a bit of luck, we'll have a nice warm gold armor. Now I have got one last step that I want to treat the gold armor to. I'm going to give it a silver dry brush in a second, but first I'm actually going to use golden armor, the speed paint, to paint in this sword itself. I might have been better served by doing this in Hoplite Gold, but I think having them be different shades will just look a little nicer. Now once that's dried, what I have is the brightest metallic silver I have, and it's literally silver. Part of the Vallejo Metallic Air range, and we're going to dry brush the gold very, 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 very carefully. Cannot stress enough, take it slow when you start applying this, because a few passes over the same spot, you'll see very quickly picks up that highlight. So mind how you go with this, concentrating towards the edges so that we get a nice really buffed out metallic shine at the corners of our gold. Until eventually you'll have gold armor that looks like this. Now I'm quite happy with that. And I'm pretty certain that once I add the satin varnish over the top of this, it's going to look a bit more smooth and it'll bring some of that shine back. I'm quite looking forward to that. For now though, I am happy with it. If you wanted to make that a little bit warmer again, bring some of that rosiness back to the fore, what you could do would be to thin down some Reikland Flesh Shade again, maybe 2 parts of medium to Flesh Shade, or 1 to 1 if you want a stronger effect, and paint that back over the gold. Concentrating on the recesses, it'll work quite well. But now I've got the fun part. I have my matte white from the Army Painter, and I get to do my tidy up. So anywhere that I have splurged a little, although I've been pretty careful while doing this. So the only places I'm really going to concentrate on are going to be likely her face, a couple of these little bits on like the winglings, some of her robes. But yeah, at this point, any white that you need to tidy up, or anything that you want to return to white for speed paint later, here we go. Now for the silver, like metallics, gunmetals, swords, and that sort of stuff, I'm going to use Iron Hand Steel. I did think about if I should use the silver speed paint metallic, but I want to use this because I know exactly what I'm going to get out of it. So this, I'm going to paint in all the silver bits with some silver. Goodness me, there is a lot of silver there. What I'm going to turn to now might seem kind of a surprise, but I've got Murder Scene, which is a really deep, just off black purple. And I'm going to use this to paint in the grip on her sword, which I'm going to do a little bit more carefully up close because I think I've just gone all over her fingers. But I'm also going to use it to paint in, let's spin around, the wax on her purity seal. We'll get a coat of this. And I'm also going to use it to paint in the cable that is attaching the servo skull to her backpack. Now, with that done, we're going to paint her skin. Now, Celestine is usually depicted as being super pale, so you might even want to try just putting Reichland flesh shade straight over the white and see what you get. But I do want to do a little bit more to it than that. So what I'm going to start with is peachy flesh. I'm going to put this on her hand first. And it always looks a lot more intense than it is when it dries, when it first goes on. So try not to be too put off by it. What's actually really interesting is how patchy that looks on camera, because in reality here, that looks way smoother. I'm not that worried because I am going to highlight that with something in a little bit, but that's an interesting difference there. Anyhow, we're going to paint in the black details now, and I'm going to do this in 2 stages. First off, with Black Legion Contrast, I'm going to paint in the sort of harder details, so the undersuit, and also the strap around her leg holding on this little charm. Remember, of course, that you are approaching a miniature that exists in 3 dimensions. So flip it around sometimes to make it easier to reach corners and what have you. And then for the leather and her hair, I'm going to use Grim Black from the Army Painter. Now, Black Legion covers a lot more like a traditional acrylic would, whereas Grim Black, well, it does work just like a contrast would, where you get a little bit more of the shape of the miniature underneath with the primer showing through. Now the red down the center of her outfit and the tabard in the front, I'm going to start with the same medium layer brush I've been using for most of this, and I'm going to use Blood Angel's Red. The Speed Paint Blood Red is going to be pretty close to this as well, but the ones I've got like Poppy Red and Carmine Red aren't quite what I have in mind, so I'm going to use this instead. So starting first of all, very carefully on the front bits. And just quickly while I'm doing that, I am finding for most of these bits it's actually easier to attack her from upside down, so bear that in mind. Now to do the big honking section of the cape on the back, I would recommend switch to a larger brush. So what I've got, this is a relatively new medium shade brush which still keeps its tip. I find it easier to work with a larger brush and a lot more contrast on these larger areas to lay it down very quickly and then shift it around while it's still wet. So, moving as quick as I can with my wiggly girl dancing around in my hands. Goodness me. Let's grip her by the wings there. But yeah, this is a bit of a tricky one. As much as possible, keep your brush moving in the same direction, same as always. And let's get down this Blood Angel's Red. Now once that's dried, we'll get a look at that from both sides. That's not too bad. There are a couple of bits where it's gone a little patchy at the edges, but I'm not too worried because we are going to fix that as we finish off. What I've got now is Ashen Stone, and this is quite a neutral grey, but it's going to work to add a little bit of depth to some of the white areas. So I'm going to knock my camera around, and then I'm going to start up under her cape here, and apply some of this, not worrying too much as I come. Oh goodness me, I cannot keep this in shot, she's so fiddly. But let's apply this out towards the edges of the white. And once that's gone on, what I've done is gotten a couple of drops of Speed Paint Medium. So this is roughly half and half. And I'm going to paint this very quickly over, I keep wanting to call them pigeons, but the doves. Now, I don't want that much on there, so I'll just wick that away. But yeah, let's give these guys a little bit of this speed paint. And while that is drying, we're going to do something very similar with Battleship Grey. Starting first by applying it on some of the white areas of armor. And then doing the same with that speed paint medium, mixing up about half and half of the same color. And let's start by brushing this over the wings. Oh my goodness, this is the bit that's all. I've been nervous about this from the start. Now this time, while your blue dries, you can grab yourself some fresh white paint. And I'm going to stick to a relatively large brush here because I want to be able to do this in quite big, smooth, sweeping motions where I'm just going to brighten up the underside of the cape. Now I haven't been terribly careful with that, so it is a little textured and gritty. Oh well, I think the varnish is going to take care of some of that. We are still on with our white though, and what I'm going to do now is with a flat-edged brush, get my hand in position there so that I can support the wing, and then just start brightening up the farthest edges. I might want a little bit more paint on my brush. Now we are finally coming to the home stretch. There's not all that much left to do. What I've got might be a bit of an oddity. This is Raging Blue, and she's got a nice little gemstone up on her shoulder here. You can do this any color you want, but it is blue on the website. So I'm going to go with Raging Blue because I like the almost oceany sort of turquoise that it is. Now for her roses, what I've done is mixed up 2 parts of speed paint medium to 1 part. This is Familiar Pink. And boy, oh boy, this looks bright going on, but the medium is really going to help it from overpowering this entirely. So, coat over the roses with it. You may have noticed way back when I first put on the Iron Hand Steel, I haven't shaded that yet, and it's because at this point is when we're going to do it. I'm going to do this in 2 different methods. I have dark tone here, and what I'm going to apply this to is any working metal. So stuff which looks like it is part of a functional mechanical part on her armor. And then any decorative elements, which are going to be silver, I'm going to use Nuln Oil instead. Now, you could just as easily thin dark tone with a little bit of a medium of some description. Really up to you what approach you want to take here. I happen to have this, so I'm going to use it. Now I am also going to treat her sword as decorative in the sense that I want the Nuln Oil to look a little bit lighter on this than dark tone would. Now you might remember that silver from way earlier when we were painting her armor. That's what we're going to use now to do some highlights on any decorative bits, as well as some of these little pointy studs on her armor. Now, still not being thrilled with how her face is, I've got some flayed one flesh, and I'm going to do the usual of painting in her cheekbones and her nose. I might do some of this off camera. Now, I'd actually forgotten that peachy flesh is so light, so that almost disappears. What I've got now, Pallid Witch flesh, the real light stuff. And I'm going to do that again. I then lightly dabbed her bottom lip with a little bit of Carroburg Crimson from the pot. You don't need to do very much of that. The last color that I'm going to apply, you could use Bony Matter here if you wanted to stick to speed paints, but I've got Skeleton Horde because I want something which is just a little bit warmer. And I'm going to paint in all of the streamers, parchment, and such like that. Now once this is dried, gosh, if I can get that in behind there. Once this is dried, I'm going to take her outside and I'm going to hit her with a spray varnish. Now my plan is to hit her with, Munitorum Varnish, which is a slightly satin finish. And I'm pretty confident that that should make things look all right. If it doesn't, well, this has been a wonderful day and I've enjoyed painting her. So I'm hoping. Then I'm going to pop the base on her. Recipe for that one will be in the description, same as always. So let's, with a bit of luck, cut to our finished Celestine. And so there at last, as far out as I can drag the camera to actually get her all in shot, Celestine is complete. Now, is she perfect? By my own admission, no. But what she is finished, and I'm not going to have to wait another 6 years to have her painted and on the table. Ultimately, it was quite a bit of fun to do something this way because the, what do you call them? The speed paints in particular turned out to be a lot more useful, that gold specifically, than I would have thought. Hoplite Gold as a base, that's turned out really well. I do like the armor color. There are a couple of other things which went a bit sideways. You might notice that the purity seals dangling from her cape, which are holding her up, they did not turn out the way that I'd planned at all, because I'd forgotten, despite putting the glove on to handle the miniature, she'd been handled for 6 odd years, and there was already grease and grime all over the miniature, so that did not turn out the way that I planned. All the same, I'm happy to have her done, and I'm not that displeased with the result. I think that looks pretty cool. I think maybe I would have been better off leaving her skin unhighlighted. The extra work that I did, I don't think adds all that much, and that peachy flesh was nice and pale in and of itself. So lots of interesting learning opportunities. Not a miniature that I'm likely to paint again, but I do wish that I had practiced on the Gevenet Superior first. Whoops. So there we have it at last. I have experimented on camera, and I must ask you that next time I say I'm doing it, stop me. So as always, thank you very much to Exit 23 Games for the light and sound equipment, as well as all of my wonderful patrons who are keeping me ticking in paints and glue, including my gorgeous producers who are showing up on screen now. Thank you folks so much for your support. You really make this channel possible. Now, any questions or anything, feel free to drop them in the old comment box below. My Twitter and Instagram are both linked there too. So, with that done, thank you very much for your time, folks, and you all enjoy the rest of your day.